If-else statements are how we get JavaScript to ask itself a true-false question. The structure of a conditional statement looks like this. It's if, and then you'll pass on a condition that either is true or false, and then you're going to specify some code that actually does something. So if a condition returns a value of true, then it's going to execute the statements that are between the first set of curly braces. We can also create if-else statements, and once we specify the keyword else, it'll move on to the next set of curly braces. If-else statements are about as simple as programming gets. In fact, they're almost written in just plain English. The if-else statements are more or less the foundation for all advanced logic that can be written in JavaScript. Let's look at an example in our file. Here's our simple page right here, and what we're going to do is we're going to use an array, and then we'll write a if statement based on that array. So I'm going to set up a variable that I'm going to call foo. I'm going to make that equal to, and inside the square brackets I'll pass on the array values. So my array values are the number 8, the string word 8, and again the number 8, but this one will be treated as a string. Then let's go ahead and let's create a if statement. So I'll write if, and I'll open some parentheses, and then inside the parentheses I'm going to put foo, and we'll query our second array item, the letter 8 typed out. And then we'll use our 3 equal signs, and remember that the 3 equal signs together represent if this is identical to, equal to the value plus it is of the same data type. So in single quotes we'll go ahead and write 8, and then I'm going to close my parentheses, and you can see that I'm putting spaces in between the values that are inside the parentheses. Remember that the spaces are purely for the sake of making the code more readable. JavaScript is going to ignore those. And then after the if statement is made, we'll set up a set of curly braces, and inside the curly brace we're just going to run an alert. Since we're making a comparison, JavaScript is going to give us either a value of true or false. This line of code right here says true or false. The value of the foo variable with the index of 1, which remember is the second item from our array, is it identical to the word 8? And if that's true, then it'll go ahead and run the alert. So let's test this out in the browser, and you can see that it does indeed run the alert. This is the word 8 written in English. Let's change the value of the if statement to the numeric number 8 that's treated as a string, and let's test this in the browser. You can see when I refresh my page, I'm actually not getting the alert message anymore, and that's because the condition is not true. And so our code just says, if this is true, run this. So lots of times what you're going to want to do is you'll want to do one thing if something is true, and then something else if the thing is false. You could write 2 if statements, but that becomes a little bit clunky, so instead we can just go ahead and say else, do something else. So let's just augment our code right here. After I have my closing curly brace, I'm going to write the keyword term else. Then I'll make another opening curly brace, and we'll just run another alert. So I'll just copy the alert we have here, and we'll save our page. And you can see that now when I refresh the page, it's saying this is the number 8. So now, because the if statement is not true, it doesn't run the first alert, it's running our else statement, which is our second alert. So in this case, the second alert is firing because the foo variable with the index of 1, the second item from our list, is not identical to the numeric number 8. Let's look at one other example of an if statement just to ensure that you understand how they work. This time I'm going to just have an if statement, so we'll get rid of our variable, and actually let's just get rid of all of this code right here. Alright, so inside of my parentheses I'm going to say 1, And then we'll use the exclamation and the equal, and then we're going to put 2. So what this statement says is 1 is not equal to 2. We'll open our curly braces. We'll write an alert. Let's save our page and test it in the browser. And you can see that my alert is firing. You should see this message because 1 is indeed not equal to 2. So here's the if statement. It doesn't have to be wrapped into a variable. We could just specify the if statement, and the if statement is going to run because this is true. If the statement didn't evaluate to true, then the code inside the curly braces would be skipped altogether. If I change the operator to equal equal, which you'll recall means equal to, let's change our message. And if we save and refresh in our browser, you can see that nothing happens. That's what we would expect. If you want to continue practicing this, I would encourage you to add another else statement and just play around with the code to make sure that you understand what's happening here. When we test in the browser, you can see that now I get the second message. As we continue to learn JavaScript, you'll find that we tend to use if and else statements quite often. They are one of the fundamental building blocks for creating more complicated scripts.